Hi, welcome to the Gamesplainer. I'm Jeff the Gamesplainer, and today I'm gamesplaining Tekhenu. Tekhenu is a relatively dense game. The very first thing that you need to do before you start playing, I'll actually say before you start understanding what's happening, is you need to select your cards. So this works in a snake version, so let's say purple is the first player, he will select one, pink will select one, then pink will select another, then purple will select another. It's doing two things. You get the stuff that is on the card, but the numbers on the top added together, whoever has the highest number will be the start player. So really quickly, let's say purple takes this one, he gets 2 gold. Let's say pink takes this one, which will give him 5 resources of his choice. Okay, he then selects another card and he thinks there's probably benefit in grabbing that one, which will either push forward that 3 times or that one 2 times. This is population, this is happiness, and it's probably worth his while pushing forward his population 3 times, 1, 2, 3. And then this player is going to grab that to enable him to take 3 of the sandstone resource. Okay, now that they've taken those cards, this person has 15, this person has 21, so he will be the start player. Those cards are now not used again for the rest of the game, so they go back into the box. The start player then chooses one of these cards. He thinks he'll choose that one, which gives him 1 more of these tokens. Don't worry too much about what's happening at the moment. You will be brought up to speed very quickly, and then he'll take that, which will push him forward 1 more on that track. These two just go to the side then. Because we now know the player order, purple and then pink. Okay, we've got to the very beginning of the game. That was just the pre-setup stuff. How this game works is relatively simple, but there's a lot of information that you kind of need to keep in your head as you're playing. So what's going to happen on your turn is you're going to select one of these dice. The section that the die is coming from is going to tell you which god power you can do. There are 6 different god powers available to us, but let's just get the basics of this game sorted out before we get to that. The other thing that you can do, rather than taking the die to actually use the portion of the board, which I'll go into in the next video, is you can use the die to gain resource. Now the way this works is it depends on how high up this resource track you are and the color of the die that you choose. So if this player chose, say, the yellow 5, he would get 5 papyrus for doing that. If he, however, chose the white 6, he would get 6 of the limestone, but he can only produce 2 limestone. So he would hang on to 2 of them. The other 4 would go over onto his negative side on the scales. And so when you get to adding up the weight of those scales, he has a -4 on there already, which would likely work against him. So he would have, rather than taking the white 6, he would have been better to take the white 2, because he wouldn't then have that thing balancing the scales the wrong direction. In the rules, it suggests that you want to try to avoid doing that. So just taking the resource is not necessarily the good thing to do, because you're not getting forward on the points, but you may find that you actually need the resource to be able to do anything that gets you the points to start with. So it is an option, but try to avoid it as much as possible. If you select from the outside track, which is called the pure track, you will take that, you'll do the thing using a number 4. So notice that there's numbers on the die and various things. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then you'll put the die on the white side, the pure side. If you then take a die from the tainted ring on your next go, you would put the die on the tainted side of your scales. Once everyone has had 2 turns, this obelisk then turns 1 section and you readjust the dice. So you notice that there's a little marker on the side of this obelisk that tells you which dice should be in the tainted, which one should be in the pure, and which one should be in the spots you're not able to touch, otherwise known as the forbidden space. So what happens here, those two would become forbidden, that one would become pure. And then we select and do the actions again. Remembering you can't touch anything that's on the inside track, it's only the outside 2 tracks that you're able to use. So we had 2 goes, we had a rotation, we had 2 more goes, we'll do that rotation again, but we go into a mate phase. M-A-A-T, please forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, I'm just having a guess at the pronunciation of that. We'll see how it goes with what my pronunciation is as I go through each Gamesplanation and Gamesplay. Once you have 4 dice, we're up to a mate phase, which means we are changing the player order. What now happens is you add up your dice. So I've got 6 and 6, which is purely balanced. So that goes into the 0. If I happen to have, let's just put that one back, grabbed that one on my last turn, I'd be at plus 12, negative 2, which puts me at 10, which would put this marker all the way down on the 10. Whoever is closest to the 0, so let's just say he happened to be there, whoever's closest to the 0 will become the first player for the next round. So this player on negative 1 becomes player 1, this player becomes player 2. If a player happened to be too far into the negatives, he would actually start losing points at this juncture. And then we continue on. We do the exact same thing, so these dice will go back into the bag. On the change of turning the obelisk, you would actually pull out another 2 dice for each of the new shaded spots. So just this one and this one, and it's 1 die per player will go there, so 2 more dice for each side. When we get to this point, all the dice on your board go back into the bag, and once again, the 2 dice for each side will get rolled and placed. Now, at this point, this is where this comes in. Whoever has the highest number would break ties. This is merely a tie-breaking thing. So if I happen to have both of them there, they're both on 4. They're both 4 away from 0. So then it comes down to these cards. Whoever's got the higher number would be in front, which is pink. So pink becomes first player. These cards then go in, and the first player would choose one of the 4 first, and then the other player would choose one of the 4, and taking the resource or whatever is pictured on the bottom of their card. Now, the other thing to bear in mind when we get to this phase is if you have managed to pick up any of these tokens, they can go onto your scale and they add 1 to whichever side they're on. So at the moment, instead of being a 10, that would actually become a 9 because this one would pull it down 1. And if you had a whole bunch of them, then you could put a whole bunch of them onto the scale to bring it closer to the 0. If you have any of these that you don't use, at this point, they actually get returned even unused. Just push them out of the way. We then go back into the game, exactly what we were just doing, until we get through to the second of those mate phases, at which point we'll go to a scoring. Now, the scoring comes down to a number of various elements of different things. Each player that has their buildings in the resource districts, whoever has the most buildings on each line will get 3 points. If there is an equal number of buildings, whoever has their building closest to the top, so if that's what it looks like, purple will have won this line. If that's what it looks like, pink will have won the line. And that's for each of the 4 different lines. If a player has put a statue here, they've gained 1 building onto both lines. So if that was equal, as I showed you before, and one of them had their statue there, purple will have won this because he's got 2 buildings and statues on that line. Then we look across the temple complex, which is over here. For each temple or statue that you have around the temple complex, so that's on these lines or these spots, you're going to get a point. For each pillar that you have within the temple complex, and once again, I'll talk about how to get these things on there in a moment, you're going to get a point per building or statue that belongs to the player in the same row. So if, for example, that player had that, this is going to get a point because it's around the temple. This will get 1 point because it's in the same line as the building. You then score victory points for each statue that you've built. So if he's built a few, I'll talk about how to build these in a moment. You'll see that there's some scores coming out. This guy would get 3 points. You don't get 3 plus 1, you just get the 3 points. When you get up to the top, it's 21 points for having all the statues out. Then, wherever your happiness marker, which is the little one, is up to, if this had managed to get up to here, the pink player would get 3 points. If that happiness marker got up to or past the 2, then he's getting 6 points. He's not getting 6 points plus 3 points. And then each player scores 2 points for every production marker that they've managed to move up to the top line. Then any points that are visible on the building line, so there's 2 points here, there's 3 points there, there's 5 points there, are scored. And then you need to pay bread for any of the bread symbols that are visible. So if he's managed to put these buildings up, he's getting 2 points, but he's got to pay for bread, or he will lose 3 points per bread marker. So that would actually lose him 12 points, even though he's gained the 2. Then we go back into the game, as we've discussed. When we get to the end of the game, there is also a little bit of final scoring on these cards. Each card will give a different thing, so you can add more to your final score with that. And whoever is at the first turn position would get 3 points. If you're playing a 3 or 4 player game, the second player gets 2 points also. And that, my friends, is the essence of the game. Now, I think that I'm going to go on to a second video to actually give you the in-depth of each of the 6 spots that can be taken. So please jump with me over to the second part of this video. If you have any comments or suggestions, please write them below. If you have any games that you would like to be Gamesplained, please shoot me an email to thegamesplainer@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter @thegamesplainer to keep up to date with the games that I'm playing. Subscribe to my videos to keep up to date with the games that I'm gamesplaining. And until next time, enjoy gaming.